I think as climate change effects become more severe, and I think there's just going to be a lot more adoption of talk about like weather control. We've seen it. Marjorie Taylor Greene has a bill now in the aftermath of these deaths, like banning, weather control.
Hell
I think that's
yeah.
going to start really like taking off.
No. More weather control. So wait, why don't you just pass that and then you could be like, well, it's banned, so it's not, you can rule that out. It looks like it wasn't weather control all along. It's illegal. You can't do that.
Yeah, I noticed so much of it. And I think actually a guy vandalized some weather radar also in Kansas, potentially over some of this stuff. So it seems like it's already having real world effects.
They're vandalizing weather radars? Oh my God.
I may be familiar with this crew. Yes, the veterans on patrol have been, they're staking out all this radar. I mean, where you are in California, I mean, famously, whenever there's one of these wildfires or in Maui, and they say it was a directed energy weapon, it was a satellite. But even that stuff has been like relatively on the fringe. But I think this is really providing an impetus for it to get talked about more.
I think it's becoming so much more mainstream. And I think you're so correct that also climate change is just going to accelerate these conspiracy theories because we're seeing so many more wildfires and just natural events. And
it's the cause of the conspiracy theories, in my opinion. I think they're not mutually exclusive either. Like the weather control conspiracy is their explanation for climate change. It's their rationalization for a changing material condition. They can't wrap their minds around it any other way. They don't think God is punishing them because they're in the right all the time and Trump is blessed, obviously. They're not going to see it like that. It must be the government doing it, even though Trump is blessed.
Seems inexplicable to people that don't believe in climate change, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, so many of these conspiracy theories are ways to sort of avoid dealing with reality. So if we look at like the quote unquote stolen election in 2020, you might say, oh, well, maybe Donald Trump wasn't as popular as I thought. Maybe the country is rejecting what I believe in. And instead you can say, oh my gosh, the election was stolen. In this case, I think someone facing reality would say, looking at some of these weather incidents, perhaps I was wrong about global warming and now we're suffering for it, but that's a tough thing to deal with. And so instead you say, look at the scorch marks. You can see it came from a laser or cloud seeding or something like that.
You gotta paint your roof blue to reflect the lasers back at the satellite.
Cloud seeding thing is interesting because I saw the CEO of a company called Rainmaker, which actually does do cloud seeding, responding to this. Can you explain what cloud seeding is?
So cloud seeding is a real thing. And so it involves sort of putting something into the clouds, chemicals that make rain more likely. And the Rainmaker is a company that is a startup that does cloud seeding. The founder
demonic.
is also a Peter Thiel fellow. So
Ew. Okay, it is demonic. I was right.
There's a connection there. And, unfortunately for them, I mean, they claim they were not responsible for this flash flood in Texas. Obviously, there were floods there before. My sense is that there's not like a ton of evidence that they were involved. On the other hand, they were seeding the clouds like 2 days beforehand. Again, I don't think there's like a liability that's been demonstrated, but it doesn't take a lot of evidence for people on the right to like jump on these.
I mean, you got to regulate the fuck out of those fuckers. You got to regulate them out of existence, really. Civilian fucking climate control? Absolutely not. Hello?
Conspiracy theories.
Yeah, well, they also have no understanding of how science works. And I saw the CEO trying to explain to people, like, listen, cloud seeding doesn't mean we can manufacture clouds. Also, like the maximum amount of rain that we could sort of like squeeze from a cloud extra would be 20% more rain. So like a flash flood.
MTG was accidentally right. Not really. She's just like doing the Alex Jones strategy of like talking about something that's close to reality. There's a lot of Republican attitude, or a lot of Republican talking points and Republican strategy that revolves around stuff just like this, where it's like you're talking about something that's kind of real. Like, does America have an immigration problem? Yes. It's not that we need to deport everyone, it's that we need to give them mass amnesty, but their solutions are always what's incorrect, right? Or their conclusions are always overdrawn or like otherwise evil. I don't know.
Like this, like there's just no way to like even scientifically, I guess, do it through cloud seeding, but it is one of those things, like you said, where it's this coincidental, all you need is the kernel of truth, right? And then people who often maybe didn't even know about cloud seeding are like, well, how often is this happening? Where is this happening? And so it sort of snowballs.
I think that this cloud seeding debate or these allegations represent kind of an interesting split on the right between what we think of as like the tech right, like the AI people, the Palantir people who want more surveillance, the singularity, whatever, versus sort of a more of a Make America Healthy Again, RFK Jr. faction that's like, you're messing with the weather patterns. You know, it's stuff that obviously, you know, they want to go back to the land or whatever. And that is exactly what they're not going to like.
Well, it reminds me of just the viral clip of Peter Thiel as well from that New York Times interview where he's talking about like he doesn't know if he believes in humanity and people aren't trans enough, that like he wants to essentially people to be able to sort of like replace and mutate any part of their body.
Okay, I don't know if he was saying people aren't trans enough. Unless that's a direct quote. That's not even an approximation of something he would say.
To essentially people to be able to sort of like replace and mutate any part of their body. And I just saw a lot of sort of, like you said, more of these traditionalist influencers being like, this is
like cybernetic enhancements or whatever, transhumanism is not the same as transgender. Like fundamentally different things.
Why he's Satan. You know, he doesn't even believe in humanity.
So another example of this kind of suspicion of tech in the Trump administration, you know, it involves a Surgeon General nominee, Casey Means. She's RFK allied, so you'd think it would be kind of this more crunchy type of thing. But she also co-founded like a wearable tech company, like a Fitbit type situation. Hers is a glucose monitor. And so there's now this big push.
Now
RFK
wants everyone wearing a fucking Fitbit type thing.
Says, I want every American wearing one within 4 years, wearing a fitness wearable. And so on one hand, you know, I guess for more tech-aligned people, like a lot of his lieutenants, that's great. And they're going to spend tens of millions of dollars in HHS, this is official, to like...
Yeah, how long, brother, before they turn that wearable into an injectable? They'll track you, brother. You can never take it off.
History fact. However, I need to talk about this. In 1999 a game released on the PS1. That game was Vib Ribbon.
Vib
Ribbon is a rhythm game with simple mechanics and very simple graphics which helped give it its charm. Look up Vibri now. The game had 2 sequels released on the PS2, however they were only ever released in Japan and never took off that much. I am begging on my hands and knees for Sony to bring back Vibri.
Vib Ribbon. Vib Ribbon. This is awesome. This is cute. Vib Ribbon's music is crazy. I like it. Thank you for the suggestion.
Make wearables cool is their language. On the other hand, you know, these kind of crunchier, more anti-vaccine people in that world say, like, what? You know, you want the government is gonna give me like a GPS tracker?
Also, I feel like those people are the ones that are concerned about EMFs, and they don't even want people wearing Apple Watches, right?
Exactly. And so suddenly RFK is saying, no, actually everyone is going to have one, and the government's going to be pushing it. And then, you know, there are a lot of these business interests involved in both Casey and Callie Means, her brother, who are surrounding RFK. And so, you know, there are these interesting splits that are emerging.
Where do you see JD Vance in all of this? Because I feel like, you know, as there's a lot of...
Taylor, what the fuck? You chose that picture on purpose. That's crazy. Rare Vance, bro. Ew. He looks... Oh my lord. My goodness.
A lot of people online...
Something happened to this guy.
that are saying like he's ascendant, or like how does he kind of navigate these splits?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging situation, right? I mean, I think, like any other politician, lacks Trump's ability to just...
You're too late. You missed the stick bug. You're too late.
Say, it's my way or the highway. I'm saying this is the new line, and that's what we're going to do. I think that's what's interesting about the Epstein stuff is we're getting an unusual level of dissension. For J.D. Vance, he's trying to be this new generation. I think there's been so much interesting writing about the new right, which is essentially like a quasi-fascist movement of which J.D. Vance is the head. He's trying to break from the old kind of like the old ways of Republicans, and yet he is really...
He's the Amy Klobuchar right. Umbrella man. The poster, the based posting keyboard warrior ass right. The Twitter right.
Really, he obviously can't criticize the administration. And so you end up in these situations where he's, supposed to be anti-war, anti-involvement in the Middle East, and yet he ends up, he's tied to these strikes in Iran because of Trump. Or, as I mentioned just a few weeks ago, he was saying, we got to get these Epstein files out. That's fascinating because they're like, well, you're the vice president, man.
Right.
Like if only someone could do something about it.
The literal vice president. That's why it seems...
Somebody said, I want to know what RFK actually thinks. I have one picture for you. That's him in there. That's him down there. In a real river full of E. coli. That's like him he's in his swamp, his bog. His stagnant little pond. Put me back in the soap.
Seems like the Epstein stuff must have come directly from Trump, because I feel like every single other person around Trump has been hyping this, and it's really quite sudden that all of them would just do this 180.
And why not let it? I mean, if you put yourself in their shoes, and perhaps it's, I think the milder version would be, well, maybe we overpromised on this. I mean, certainly the argument they make in the memo is, well, there's no evidence really to charge anyone else, and the only material we have is abuse stuff, and so we can't release that, understandably, and so that's it. But I think why not let it peter out? Why not, maybe put out some boring releases of what they did have that they could release?
Well, yeah, you have to release like redacted comms and like at least some stuff between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine, like to tie their cases together. So I have no fucking idea what their plan is. It's just they're dropping it. It's over.
Release, but instead they're just saying case closed. And then I think again what really adds the fuel here is Trump saying move on, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, speaking of just the MAGA world and some of these influencers, I want to talk about Candace Owens, because you've been doing some reporting on her lately.
So this is an interesting circumstance. I mean, Candace Owens really is sort of such a unique figure.
Bro, what did she do to her hair? She slathered that shit on. Crusty.
And yet I think also like very characteristic of like what it takes to succeed on the right these days in right-wing media, and someone who's learned a lot of lessons I think from broader social media. I mean, she was she came up like through Gamergate, was at Ben Shapiro's operation The Daily Wire, broke off with him over Israel, and now what's on my mind, I guess, is she's been really doing this thing where you like package YouTube, like long YouTube videos, the classic YouTube documentary. And so in this case she's been on this crazy conspiracy theory that the French president Macron's wife is trans. And
she's also been routinely attacking Harvey Weinstein's accusers, by the way, and trying to redeem Harvey Weinstein, saying that he's like, or implying that he's falsely accused. I am censored. I can't say what is deserved here. I am censored.
I'd say, well, no, who cares? I'll tell you what, it's not.
Yeah, she like talked to him personally and seems to like be fond of him.
true, but like
It's
she kind of
bankers.
ties it into like a cabal, classic. It really gets into like classic QAnon, like sinister.
Well, that's what I mean. It sounds like that's kind of like the new deep state. Like there's this secret trans cult running this world leader.
Exactly. I mean, it goes back to the Middle Ages. I mean, it's really crazy stuff that she gets into. But what I think is interesting here is that last week she said,
It's because she's an ethno-nationalist, and ethno-nationalists have their own like mythos, and their own like racial genesis to point to that is all completely ahistorical and fictional. Look at the Aryan race, you know what I mean? It's pretty much the same thing, but for like Western Christian identity. It's very weird.
I can now reveal that Donald Trump called me and asked me to stop talking about Macron's wife and claimed that Macron had said to him, Candace Owens needs to cut it out. And that, now Trump says Macron's holding up the Ukraine peace process because of this. Well, let's set the Ukraine stuff aside. I don't think Candace Owens would just totally make a call with Trump up out of whole cloth. But I said, you know what? I'll
That's
ask
crazy.
the White House. And I figured they would say, at least on background or whatever, this is a total lie. And they said, hey, we're not going to comment on Trump's private conversation. Now, that was odd to me. And so are we in a world where Candace Owens is able to, with these totally nonsense conspiracy theories, and I'll tell you, I've watched many hours of this series. It's awful. And we know that the French president has sent her legal letters before saying cease and desist. So he's aware.
Well, that's just, she uses that as like, they're censoring me. When they're like, just stop accusing my wife of being transgender, and there's like a conspiracy about it.
Of it. In a world that Donald Trump is taking time out of his schedule to like chase these little conspiracy theories around,
Gross.
Apparently so. And I feel like that tells us something about the age we live in.
Yeah, well, I also think it says something about people's desire, like the MAGA movement's desire to continually believe that there's this like secretive cabal, right? Like, or this secret world that Epstein, the QAnon, the Clintons, like.
It feels like it stems from like a lack of any kind of accountability in the modern era of our leadership. Like, America is so like violently undemocratic that people want to see some kind of tangible accountability to feel like the world is sane, that like the worst kind of criminals do get punishment. It gives them a sense of stability and order, and they're desperately seeking it out because it's increasingly rare. And they get unhinged from reality because they are clinging to the, idea that good guys are, in charge and bad guys are being punished or to be punished. They don't understand.
Macron, all of these people are kind of involved with, and you have to kind of go to increasingly like extreme levels to justify it. Like you said, like going back to the Middle Ages or claim it, like it just, the claims get increasingly, I guess, like deranged. I mean, it's proved incredibly popular.
Ugh.
Like I hear from people regularly who started to listen to Candace Owens for her pop culture commentary or her commentary on Diddy or Blake Lively, and now they are quite convinced that, this conspiracy theory has legs.
That kind of the celebrity gossip to QAnon or cabal or whatever pipeline that is so fascinating. But yeah, I mean, it's just very interesting how much she and kind of people like her on that kind of like women's gossip issues / politics and conspiracy theories have kind of become its own genre.
And I mean, there's been so much discussion of like the men are being radicalized and we need to de-radicalize the men, or, the manosphere or whatever. And some people have started to talk a little bit more about like the women's version of this, but I see so many of these movements coming from women. Like
the link to this video is in chat, by the way, if you're curious. Support Taylor Lorenz. She's a friend of the show. One of the best tech journalists and online media journalists out there.
Pizzagate stuff was, I mean, it was a lot of like women. QAnon was very female driven, right? Like, I mean, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of these other figures, like it just feels like a lot of the biggest conspiracies are tied in with celebrity culture. They're tied in with pop culture, and they appeal to this, like, I don't know, like 45-year-old housewife or something that kind of like dips in and probably watches too much YouTube and gets their news from Reddit.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I mean, that takes it
TikTok
right back to the Epstein stuff, right? I mean, I think that's also like part of what is so compelling about this stuff is it's celebrities, it's people and that's why when it's some random person, James O'Keefe released Jeffrey Epstein's speed dial list, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what's it going to be? And then it was just like his assistant, who cares? But I mean, the real energy.
Yeah, he's not gonna have like the most incriminating shit on his speed dial. It's like, it's gonna be a little deeper than that. but that's the information that the government is withholding. You know what I mean? Or at least like the definitive information.
Behind this is this idea that like it's very potent because it's going to be all these figures unmasked that we know, and so I think that's, again, you know, I think that's going to be it's a very, I think, viral ready story that I think the administration is going to have trouble stopping.
Will, thank you so much for joining me today. By the way, where can people continue to follow your work?
Yes, I'm on X, on you know, Blue Sky at Will Summer. I'm on at thebulwark.com. I send out a newsletter twice a week called False Flag about all these topics.
It's so good.
Thank you, and of course I'm on the Bulwark YouTube as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right.
Yeah, W. Taylor, like and subscribe. Big fan of her work personally. Damn, Eric Adams is all over the news talking shit about Mamdani on Fox News. What do you think you're doing? Eric Adams is just going to get the Republican vote in New York, which is nobody. Alan Dershowitz just detonated a legal hand grenade on live TV. I know for a fact Epstein documents are being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names. I know who's suppressing them. But a judge's order silences me. Hand to God. What is going on?
Prove I was innocent. So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what
I mean, he was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer.
I know, but I hand to
So is it attorney-client privilege because he's implicated in it?
God. I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them. I knew every document would prove I was innocent.
What the fuck? Also, how does a document prove you're innocent, as in, like, not a pedophile? The document said I had my pants on the whole time, or whatever he said. My mom is one of those conspiracy theorists, and she sends me Facebook videos about how vaccines cause autism, and that she's so sorry for getting me vaccinated as a kid because I have autism, even though I've told her multiple times to stop. That's crazy. Your mom is probably autistic. You should tell her that. If she hyperfixates on vaccines like that. Also, it's hereditary. So. Literally not caused by vaccines. I think that's part of people's, like, denial, is they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they might be neurodivergent themselves and passed it on to their fucking kids, so they have to blame somebody else. The world isn't fair, but crying about how unfair America is, it won't stop my benefits from being cut. I can boycott. Boycott what? I want to see Eric Adams on another mainstream media interview. This is MSNBC. And then he was on Fox Business. I don't need to see them both, though. He said he's lying. Mayor Adams sounds off on Zohran Mamdani's African-American claim. This is so stupid. Born in Uganda, moved to America when he was 7. When he's applying for college, it's valid for him to say that. But they also didn't even have the proper checkmark to represent what he was, and he didn't even get into the college. This is such an insane story. Nobody is going to give a shit about this. I'm glad they're focusing on it, to be honest. It means nothing. Electorally, it's like a joke. It's a joke of a retort to Mamdani's campaign, comparatively. No, he didn't get into the college.
Hey guys,
it's for Columbia.
Manhattan, just outside of Washington Square Park. We're about to meet New York City Mayor Eric Adams. We're going to talk with him a range of topics. President Trump, the indictment he faced, the charges that were eventually dropped, his upcoming race with Zohran Mamdani, and a very
Why does Fox News keep saying he's only been here for 7 years? Because they're lying.
Interesting phone call he got from Andrew Cuomo. We're going to hit it all. Sit down and have a chat with Mayor Eric Adams. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
No, your question. No,
He dapped him up? Oh, God, dude. He's so lame.
So tell me, of all the places you